My mother-in-law spent 8 years building an entire narrative about me. The DUI, the blackmail, the trapped marriage, and everyone bought it. My friends, his family, even my husband let the lie breathe and grow, like mold in a wall you never look behind. But receipts don't lie. Old text messages don't lie. And the woman who handed my husband the car keys 8 years ago, she wasn't who she claimed to be. I didn't know any of this on the Tuesday night I found Ethan's iPad on the couch. I was just a wife making pasta, waiting for a man who said he'd be home at 7. The text message had been sitting there for 47 minutes. I watched the cursor blink, deleted what I'd typed, then typed it again. When are you coming home? I hit send and set the phone face down on the kitchen island, where the pasta water was starting to tremble against the sides of the pot. It was a Tuesday. Pasta night. Ethan was supposed to be home by 7. It was 7:42. The phone buzzed. I picked it up too fast, nearly knocking over the wine glass I'd poured 2 hours ago and barely touched. One word. No sorry, no explanation. Just as if I were a delivery he was waiting for rather than a wife he'd promised to come home. I stared. I'd been getting a lot of those lately. Soon when I asked about the weekend. Soon when I asked if he'd booked the anniversary dinner. Soon when I asked if anything was wrong. I turned off the burner under the pot. The water spilled, bubbles retreating like something alive deciding not to. The living room was dark except for the TV, which I'd left on for. I walked it, heels clicking on the hardwood I'd picked out myself, and stopped at the Ethan's iPad air, face up, screen still lit from that morning. He'd been forgetting a lot of things. I picked it up to put it on the charger, and that was when a group message thread, open on. Hey family, Ethan, Linda, his sister Karen, 2 cousins I'd nicked. Messages coming in fast, gray bubbles stacking on top. My thumb hovered over the power button. I should not read messages that weren't mine. I read them. Is he actually this? I thought Mom was exaggerating. Linda. He's been miserable years. You know how she is. Controls every little thing. Mark. Yeah, honestly, how does he even stand it? Total control. He wouldn't have married her if she hadn't held that DUI. The whole thing was a setup from the scene. Wait, really? I thought she just helped Linda. Help. She knew exactly what she was doing. Bailed him out, then made him pay with a ring. And Mark. He'll figure out he paid back the wrong person soon enough, Karen. That mean. Cousin Mark, come on. Naomi sees it. He just needs to pull the trigger on the divorce, and then it's full chase. Naomi is already looking at apartment. I told her to be patient, but she's Karen. Mom, you're setting him up with someone married? Linda, he's not still married in a way that matters. She's been unbearable. Let her keep acting like this. Once the divorce goes through, she'll have nothing, Cousin Mark. She'll be lucky if she doesn't end up on the street, honestly, Linda languished. But, yes, she made her bed. I read the latch twice. Then I scrolled back up and read the whole thing again, slowly, as if the words might rearrange themselves to something kinder, if I. The iPad hands. Somewhere in the house, the refrigerator clicked on, a low hum filling the silence like water sea cup. I stood in the middle of my living room, the one I'd painted, curated, where I'd hosted Thanksgivings and the night Ethan had carried the threshold, and I felt something inside me go very still, not anger. Not yet, something colder. The feeling you get when you've been standing on a floor your whole life and suddenly realize it's ice, and it's been cracking under you time. What about the DUI? 8 years ago. Ethan, 29, new at the firm, at a holiday party, gotten behind the wheel, hit up on Burnside. No one hurt, but the cops came. The visor came back high, and his boss had already been looking at him go. My father knew a lawyer. My father paid the fine, paid the other driver, paid to have the record sealed before it touched Ethan's career. Ethan had proposed. On one knee, apartment kitchen, crying, saying, "Don't deserve you. I'll spend the rest of it to you." I'd said yes, because I loved him, believed him, and held it over his head. I had never once said marry them, arrest you. It wasn't what happened. In fights. I knew I had, after everything I did for you. Times, maybe 5. I could remember each one, the words tasting as I said them. I'd hated myself every time. I'd said them anyway. Because when you're drowning in a bridge going slowly cold, you grab what flotsam is within reach, and taken those 5 moments, and built a cathedral out of them. A whole story. Me, the blackmailer. Me, controller. Me. Her poor son. The iPad buzzed. Message. Linda. Ethan, are you reading this? Call me, talk about the timeline. I set the iPad very carefully, as if there was something alive that might bite. I walked back to the kitchen. My phone was on the island, the screen showing, "When are you coming home?" And soon, I picked. Open the thread. Thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I saw the group chat. I could type, "Have you been planning this?" I could type, "Come home so we can talk about this like adults." Typed, "It's no rush. It's okay if you don't come back." I hit send before I could think about it. The blue arrow slid up. The message settled under my name, neat and like a door closing. Then I picked the iPad back up, opened the group chat one more time, a screenshot. Then another. I emailed to myself. I didn't know why. It felt like the kind of thing you do when you're standing in a burning house and to grab the photo album out. Not because you need it, but because some part let it all turn to ash. At 11 o'clock, I turned off the lights and went to bed alone. The pot, cold and clumped. The house was still on the island, half full. The rim smudged with lipstick I'd reapplied at 6:30 to look nice when he got home, and did not come home that night. I lay in the dark, in the bed we'd picked out together. In the room I'd painted soft blue, that it reminded him of the coast. And I thought about Linda's words. Naomi looking at apartments on the east side. This was about a difficult. This was Anne. They were already executing it. Been at it for months, maybe longer. I'd been in my kitchen, making pasta, waiting for a man moved out in every way that mattered. I reached for my phone. The screen, casting blue light across my messages from Ethan. Nothing. I opened my notes app. Created a new note. They think I'm the villain. Then I set the phone down, pulled onto my side, and closed my eyes. Somewhere outside, door slammed. A dog barked. The house settled, old wood creaking in September air. I did not die. I lay there, eyes closed, and felt the ice under my feet crack a little, and for the first time in 8 years, I did not try to step off it. I woke at 6:30 to a house that was too quiet. No shower running, no footsteps on the stairs, no clink of a coffee mug. Ethan hadn't come home. I'd known it when I fell asleep, but knowing in the dark and knowing in the gray Portland morning were two different things. In the dark, you could tell yourself he'd gotten in late and crashed on the couch. In the morning, the couch was empty. The front door was still locked from the inside, and the pillow next to mine had no dent. I showered, got dressed, and went downstairs. The pasta pot was still on the stove. I carried it to the sink and watched the cold, clumped noodles slide out in a single mass before running the garbage disposal. I was wiping down the island when the front door opened. Ethan walked in wearing yesterday's clothes, hair flat on one side like he'd slept on a couch. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Hey, I need to grab some things. Clothes, charger." He was already halfway up the stairs. "I've been staying at Dave." Dave was his business partner. I'd met him 3 times. I did not believe him, but I didn't say it. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and listened to drawers open, hangers scrape, sharp, efficient sounds, like someone packing for a trip he'd planned a long time ago. He came down with a duffel bag and started unplugging chargers from the kitchen. He stopped. "Are you going to tell me what's going on? Or do we just pretend this is normal?" He's the long, patient kind you give someone being unreasonable. "We need space. You've been a lot lately. Controlling. Everything has to be exactly how you want it. The house, the schedule, who I see, I can't." He said it evenly, like reading from a rehearsed list. Maybe Linda had helped. "Do you want a divorce?" Ethan looked at the floor, then no. "Anywhere but. I think we both need to figure out what we want." It wasn't yes. But after 8 years, I knew what "let's figure this out separate" meant. He'd already figured it out. He just didn't want a word. "Okay," I said. He blinked. "Okay? Okay, if you need space. I grabbed keys. I have to shop." I walked out before he. On the porch, I missed the car keyhole twice before I got the door open. My hands were shaking. I hadn't known. The shop on Mississippi Avenue was my place. Hand-thrown ceramics, pillows, candles that smelled like Pacific Northwest rain, which was just wet dirt. I'd opened it 6 years ago with jewels, enough. Rich. But enough that I'd never had to ask for money. Enough that I had my own checking account, my own savings, my own life that didn't depend on being ill. I rearranged the wall display and helped a couple pick out a wedding gift and tried not to think about the screen. At noon, I texted, "Bringing wine goes tonight. We're not talking about your husband too, which means we're definitely husband." I almost said no. Then I thought about going home to an empty house and typed 7. 9. Marie showed up at 7:05 with 2 bottles of Pinot and a bag of tacos from the truck. She spotted the half-full wine from last night, still on the island. Lipstick sim. She just emptied it in the sink and poured. Standing up. And Mari told an ER story about a guy with a shampoo bottle. Shouldn't be. And I laughed for the first time 4 hours. Then the laughter died, and my taco down. Okay. Spill. I told. Not everything. Not the group chat, not the screenshots, not Naomi. Just Ethan had moved out, called me controlling. Space. I said it flat, like a weather report. Mari without interrupting. When I finished, she took a long and said, "Tell you something. And you're going to be minor." My stomach dropped. What? That story? About you blackmailing Ethan into marrying you? The DUI thing? Mari watched my face. I've heard it. More than once. At parties, from people we both know. The room tilted. I gripped the edge. Who? I don't remember who said it first. It's just out there. Stacy mentioned it a couple years ago. Then again at the July thing last summer. From that guy Ethan works with. I thought it was bullshit, obviously. I know you. She paused. Clara, you're white as a sheet. I was white as because I was putting it together. The group chat, Linda's messages, the blackmail story. It wasn't just family. It was everywhere. Our friend circle, our social world. People looked at me and saw a woman who'd trapped a man. People pitied Ethan. People whispered parties, and I had no idea. Who's it? Mari hesitated. I don't know for sure, but every time I heard it, it traced back to Linda somehow. Someone heard from someone who heard it from Ethan's mom. I didn't want to say anything because it's crazy mother-in-law's and I said automatically. Then about Linda's messages on the iPad. Linda calling me a blackmailer. Linda planning my divorce. Linda setting her son up while I was still in the house. I said. Mari squeezed my hand across the island. Story for you. Mari left at 10. I locked the door and stood listening to the quiet. My phone buzzed on a calendar reminder. Anniversary dinner, Canard 12th, 7 p.m. I'd booked it 3 weeks ago, back when ice meal might fix things. I deleted the reservation. Then I found the screenshot and stared at them for a time. Control freak. And up on the street, I clicked the email but didn't the screenshots. Need them. The phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan. Found a place. I'll get the rest of my stuff this weekend. A place. Of course he had. They'd probably picked it out together. Ethan and Naomi, touring apartments while I ate pasta and I typed, okay, setting the phone down when it buzzed a third time. A text from an unknown number. The contact photo showed a woman with long dark hair holding a coffee cup. The kind of photo that said I'm lonely, not the other woman. Hi, Clara. I work with Ethan. I know this is awkward, but I was hoping we could talk sometime. No pressure, some things from me directly. I stared at the message. I could delete it, block the number, throw them across the room. I typed, who gave you my number? Hit send. Then I set the face down, poured another glass of wine at the kitchen table, the table I'd picked out, where we'd eaten tears, and waited. The phone did not buzz again that night. I spent Wednesday in the kind of focused haze that comes from having made a decision you're not yet ready to examine. I called a divorce lawyer, a woman named Patricia Howe, recommended by Jules's sister, who'd gone through a messy custody battle 2 years ago. The consultation was over Zoom, and I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and a cup of coffee that went cold while I talked. The house is marital property, Patricia said, clicking a pen. Purchased during the marriage, both names on the deed. You'd be looking at a 50-50 split of the equity, assuming no prenuptial agreement, which you said there isn't. Right. Your shop, the boutique. You said you opened it 6 years ago with a business partner. Using your own premarital savings and a small business loan in your name only? Yes. Then it's likely your separate property. Ethan wouldn't have a claim to the business itself, though he might argue that income from the business during the marriage is marital. We can address that. Do you have children? No, Patricia nodded. That simplifies things. The main assets are the house, retirement accounts, and any joint savings. My advice, don't move out. Stay in the house. Document everything. And don't sign anything until I've reviewed. I wrote that down. Don't move out. Document everything. Don't sign anything. It sounded like instructions for surviving a natural disaster, which, I supposed, was... One more thing, Patricia said. Is there any info? I thought about me. The East Side apartment. The text message. I believe so. I don't have... Oregon is a no-fault state. Infidelity doesn't significantly impact property division. But if there's been dissipation of marital funds, spending joint money on her. That can be. Keep an eye on the credit cards. I thanked her and ended the call. I sat at the table for a while, staring at 50-50 on the house. The shop was mine. I wasn't going to end up on the street, no matter what Linda's cousins predicted. I had resources. I just had. Ethan's company held its annual charity gala on Friday night at the Portland Museum. I'd RSVP'd yes 3 weeks ago, back when I still thought of myself as someone who attended galas. I'd considered canceling. Had said, "You don't owe any appearance. Stay home, eat ice cream, watch bad TV." Mari had said, "If you don't go, Linda wins. She'll tell everyone you're having a breakdown. Go, look amazing, say nothing." I went. I wore a black dress I'd bought last spring, never worn, fitted, sleeveless, the kind of dress that said I am fine and watch me. I did my makeup carefully, the way I used to for work events when I was trying to impress Ian's colleagues. I drove myself to the museum, in the garage, and alone. The gala in the main hall, crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a string quartet playing something that sounded like elevator music with better funding. I walked through the entrance and immediately left. People looked, people whispered. I could see it in the way eyes darted when I met them, in the way a cluster of Ethan's co-workers went past. I got a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, stood near a sculpture, looking at it like I cared about modern, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Linda appeared at my elbow like a ghost in a pearl necklace. She was wearing a pale blue suit and had her hair set in the same soft waves she'd worn since administration. "Claire, darling." Linda's voice was warm, concerned, the voice of a woman who cared deep about appearing to care. "I'm so glad you came. I know these things can be difficult right now. You've much stress." She turned slightly, addressing the small group that had gathered. Ethan's boss, his wife, a woman from the architecture firm down the hall. "Claire's been going a very emotional time. We're all just trying to be supportive. If she seems a little off tonight, please be patient with her." There it was, the setup. Clara the unstable one, Clara the emotional wreck. Linda had just announced to Ethan's entire professional circle that I was seriously. I set my champagne nearby table. I turned to Linda with a reach my eyes. "Linda, that's so thoughtful of you to be concerned. Really doing very well." I kept my voice steady, just loud enough for the group to hear. "Ethan moved out last week. I suppose that's what you're referring to. Leaving his wife. You've been so supportive of him during this difficult time. I can only imagine how hard it must be for you, watching him go through a separation while you're already soon." The silence that followed was the kind you could stand a spoon in. The string quartet played on, oblivious. Linda's smile froze on her face, her lips slightly parted to her pearl necklace. Ethan chose that moment to walk up. He was wearing the suit I'd bought him for his birthday, whiskey in his hand. He took in the scene, Linda's face, the gruelance, my calm, and his expression casual to alarm. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I said. I picked my champagne back up. "Your mother was just expressing my emotional well-being, assuring her that I'm fine." I looked at her. "Aren't I, Linda?" Linda recovered first. She pasted on a bright smile. "Of course, sir. I'm sorry I overstepped. I know it." I told Ethan. "Enjoy them. I'm going to get another drink." I walked away before either of them could respond. I could feel their eyes on my back. Ethan's, the whole room's, but I didn't turn around. I walked to the bar, ordered a gin and tonic, and stood there with my back my shoulders relaxed, and my hands steady and if I was okay. I stayed for another hour. I talked to a woman from the office who told me, quietly, "I always thought you for what it's worth." I thanked her and didn't cry. I ate canapé. I left at 9:30. Driving home through Portland streets with the windows down, the cold air stinging cheeks. When I got home, my phone had a text from Ethan. "You didn't have to do Ella." I stared at it. Then I typed, "You didn't do that in the group chat." I set the phone down and waited. Minutes later, the phone screen lit up. It wasn't Ethan. It was Ethan calling Linda. I could see his iPad was still on the kitchen counter, connected to the same iCloud account. Notification popped up on the screen. Ethan was calling, and he was saying thing. I didn't know it, but I knew the rules had changed. I picked up the iPad, opened the group chat, and took a fresh screenshot. Then I set it to lights and went to bed. Since Tuesday, I fell asleep quickly. The gala had changed something. I could feel it in the way Ethan's text got shorter, in the way Linda stopped commenting on my Instagram posts. In the way a woman I barely knew from the neighborhood stopped me at the grocery store on Saturday and said, "I heard about Ethan. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I never believed that stuff about you. That stuff. The blackmail story. It was out there, living its own life, and I was tired of letting it." On Sunday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop, and I started digging. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I just knew that 8 years ago something had happened on Burnside Street, and the version of it that everyone believed, Linda's version, wasn't the whole truth. Maybe not even close. I started with my own records, old emails, bank statements, the folder on my computer labeled Ethan DUI 2018 that I'd created at the time and never opened again. I found the lawyer's invoice, my father's lawyer, a man named Arthur Pellman, who'd since retired. I found the receipt for the damages to the parked car, paid by my father's check. I found the court documents, the plea deal, the sealed record. All of it was exactly as I remembered. Then I went further. I searched my old text messages and the ones backed up to my iCloud going back. I found the thread with Ethan from that week. His messages were desperate, apologetic, terrified. "I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry. I'll pay your dad back every... I don't expect you to stay with me after..." And then, 3 days after the act, "I want to marry... Not because of this. Because I love you. And because I don't deserve... But I want to spend the rest of my life..." I read that message and felt something crack in my... He'd said to me. He'd typed words. I'd believe him. But I also found something else. Email, buried in my sent folder that I'd forgotten about. I'd forwarded myself a screenshot of a text conversation between Ethan. I'd taken it from Ethan's phone one night when he was ill. Back when I was still insecure enough to check his... I'd forgotten I saved it. The screenshot was dated the day before Ethan's. "I need to talk to you about a thing." "Is this about the girl?" "Yeah. I'm going to ask to marry me." "No. You don't have this. We can find another way to pay her father." "It's not. I owe her. She saved my career, my life. I can't just walk away." "You can't. You're not obligated, Ethan. I am, and I don't like her. I'm doing this. I'll make it up to you, I promise." I stared at the screenshot. Hands were cold. "I owe her. I'm doing this. I'll make it up to you." He hadn't proposed because he loved me. He'd proposed because he owed me. And he'd told his exactly that. The night before, he got down on one knee in my kitchen and cried, "I love you." The "I love you." The truth. And Linda, who'd spent 8 years telling people I'd blackmail Ethan into marriage, known. She'd known Ethan proposed voluntarily, out of obligation, coercion. She'd invented the blackmail story to better. He was blackmailed was a more simple narrative than he married a woman he didn't love because he felt guilty, and his mother anyway. The laptop. I sat in the quiet for a long time, listening to the rain hit the window. I didn't cry. I'd passed crying around the group chat. This was something else. A cold, clean clarity or a storm. I thought about Naomi. Texted me. The woman looking at East Side Apartments. The woman that had set up with Ethan. Naomi was new. A recent development, but what if she wasn't? I picked up the phone and called Stacy, the friend Mari had mentioned, the one who'd first blackmail story. Stacy picked up on the third ring, sent her from me. "Hey, I know this is out of the... I said. "But I need to ask you something. A couple years ago, you mentioned something about Ethan and me, the DUI, the marriage. I heard it from someone. Clara, I am so sorry. I never should... It's fine. I'm not upset. Who did you hear it from?" Stacy hated. "Honestly, I think a woman named Naomi. She was at that holiday party, you know, the one at the architecture. She was new. I think she worked with Ethan. We were in the kitchen drinks. He just mentioned it like it was common knowledge. I didn't think anything of it at the time. My blood went cold. You're sure it was..." "Yeah. Dark hair, really pretty, those big glasses." She said something. "It's so sad. He only married a DUI thing, you know? I mean, I should have it, but no, I get it." "Thanks, Stacy." Up. I sat very still. Naomi hadn't just heard the story. Naomi had been spreading it. Holiday party. To my friends, while I was in the other room. And if Naomi had been at Ethan's firm's holiday, that meant she'd worked there. That meant she'd known Ethan. Meant she wasn't new. My hand, but not from cold. I opened my laptop again and went back to the old the ones from 2018. I searched for Naomi. Nothing. I searched for Park. Nothing. I searched the DUI folder, the police report, the witness statements, the list of party, and there it was. In the police report, under witness present at scene prior to incident. List of names from the holiday party. Most of them I didn't recognize. But one name made me stop breathing. Naomi Park. Naomi Park had been at the party. Naomi Park had been there that night. 8 years ago. Before the marriage, before the blackmail story, before the Eastside apartments, I scrolled further. Brief, just a few lines. Ms. Park stated she had Hale earlier in the evening. She stated he had consumed several drinks. She did not witness the accident itself. All drinks. She'd seen him drinking. She'd him. And then he'd gotten in the car. I thought about the keys. Who had the keys? I never asked. I'd never thought to ask. Ethan had always said he'd driven himself party, that his keys were in his pocket, that he'd just made a stupid decision. But what if it hadn't been? What if someone had handed them to him? What if Nay handed them to him? I closed the top. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain was coming down harder now, streaking the glass. In the fall, the sky the color of ooze. I thought about 8 years of my life. A marriage built on a debt, a mother-in-law who'd reworry, a woman who'd been there from the beginning, who'd watched Ethan get in the car drunk, who'd then spinning the story that I was the villain. I had been the only one who didn't know. I went to the closet and pulled down the box of photo albums. The warp shelf, untouched for months. I carried them to the living room and sat on the floor. I opened the first one. Wedding photos. Ethan in a tux, crying during the vows. Me in a white dress, smiling like I'd won something. I'd thought I'd won something. I thought I'd won him. Photos out of the album, one by one. I didn't tear them. I didn't burn them. I just stacked them neatly on the floor. Wouldn't have to look at the lie in his eyes. It was empty. I texted Mari. I want a divorce. Not because he's leaving. Because I'm... Mari texted back 30. Good. More wine. I set the phone down. I looked at the stack of face photos on the floor. I looked at the empty album. I felt not angry, not name. Just hollow. Like a room that had been empty. Front doorbell rang. Round. It's away. She couldn't be here already. I walked to the door peephole. Ethan was standing on the porch. He was pale. His hair was wet from the rain. He was holding his phone and ankles were white. He'd seen a ghost. I opened the door. What are you doing here? Clara. His voice was... We need to talk, Linda, and she did some things I didn't know about. I need to tell you. I stood in the doorway, rain starting to fall on my bare arms, and looked at the man I'd made. The man who'd owed me. The man who'd cried at his... The man who'd just found out his mother, too. I didn't know what he was going to say. But I knew, with old certainty that settled in my whatever it wasn't enough. I stepped aside and let him in. Ethan stood in my foyer, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood I'd picked out, and looked like a man who'd been told the sky was green. He'd taken off his jacket. It was soaked through, and held it in both hands like a shield. Can I sit down? I gestured to the living room. The stack of face-down photos was still on the floor. I saw Ethan's eyes find them, flicker, then look away. He sat on the edge of the couch, the way you sit when you're not sure you're welcome. I sat in the armchair across from him. I didn't offer him anything to drink. I didn't turn on the light. The room was lit by the gray afternoon coming through the window, and it made everything look like a photograph from a bad memory. What did Linda do? I asked. Ethan ran a hand through his wet hair. I got a call from Karen today, my sister. She said Mom has been telling people things. About you. About the marriage. That you blackmailed. He paused, like the word tasted bad. Karen said it's been going on for years. That everyone in the family believe it. That even some of our friends believe. I said no. I didn't know, Ethan said. His voice was quiet, almost aware. I mean, I knew Mom didn't like you. I knew she said things. But I didn't know she was telling people. That you threatened. That you forced me in. Did you tell her it was true? Ethan looked at us. I didn't know she would. Not like this. Not to everyone, Ethan. My voice steady. Did you ever, at any point in the last years, tell your mother to stop talking about me? He'd answer. Which was... I didn't. I leaned back in the chair. So here's what's happened. You're going to tell me exactly what you know, and exactly what you didn't know, and exactly what you found out. And I'm going to listen. And then we're going to figure out what... Ethan nodded. He talked for minutes. He told me about group chat. He admitted been in it. That he'd read messages. That he had me. He told me Linda had been pushing him toward Naomi for... That she'd invited Naomi to dinners. That she'd accidentally given Naomi his rules so they'd run. He told me he'd started seeing Naomi emotionally, physically, insisted. Believe him. About months ago, when the marriage had... He did not mention that Naomi had been at the party. He did not mention that Naomi had been there when he got drunk. Filed it away. I'll him out on it. Not yet. When he finished talking, it was darker. The rain had stopped, but the still heavy. Ethan looked at me, his eyes red, his face open in a way I had. I'm sorry, he said. So sorry, Clara. I should have done things differently. I should have stopped her. I should have talked to. Stop. I held up a hand. Don't apologize to me right now. You don't get to apologize until you've actually done something. He's not doing something. Ethan closed his mouth. I need to think, I said. I need you to leave. He stood up. He hesitated at the door, like anything else. Then he said, and left. The door behind him. I stood in the foyer for a long time, pull away. Then I picked up my phone and texted Naomi. I'll meet you. Tuesday, 2:00. The coffee shop on Mississippi, by my shop. Don't be late. He texted back within a minute. Okay, thank you. Bye. Tuesday at 2:00 into the coffee shop. Naomi was already there, sitting at a table in the back, holding a latte with both hands preserver. She was even prettier in person contact photo. Dark hair back in a low ponytail, minimal makeup, a cream sweater that looked flashy. She looked like the kind would approve of. Across from her. I didn't order anything, Naomi, and waited. Thank you for meeting me, Naomi said. Her voice was soft, careful. Oh, this is incredibly awkward. I wanted to explain. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Ethan and I, we connected. He's been so unhappy, and Were you at the holiday party in 2018? Naomi stopped mid-sentence. Her face went blank. Then, slowly, the color drained from it. What? The holiday. At Ethan's firm. December 2018, the night he got the DUI. My voice was flat, matter-of-fact, like I was reading a list. Were you there? Naomi's hand started shaking. The latte sloshed in the cup. She set it down carefully, like I was afraid it might break. I found the police report. Your name is in it. Witness statement. You said you'd spoken to Ethan earlier You said he'd had several drinks. I leaned forward slightly. You were there. You were there the whole time. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. She didn't try to deny it. She just sat there, crying quietly, wiping the back of her hand like, I didn't mean for anything to happen, she whispered. We were all drinking. Everyone was. He said he was fine. He said he only lived 10 minutes. I handed him his keys. Them on the table and I handed them to him. I said, drive safe, and I handed him the keys. The words hung in the air between us. The coffee shop noise, the espresso machine, the conversation, faded into a hum. He hit a parked car, I said. My voice quieter now. No one hurt, but he could have killed. And you keys. I know. Naomi was crying harder now. I know. I've carried it for 8 years. Every time I thought about that night, I felt like I owed him. Like it was fault too. And then Linda reached out to me last year. And she said Ethan was and she had time with him. And I thought maybe I could make him happy, make up for handing him the keys. Naomi looked face wet, her eyes desperate. Bad person, Clara. I made a mistake, and I've been trying to fix it the wrong anything, I said. Naomi blinked. What? You don't owe him. You made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but you don't get to spend 8 years feeling guilty. And that guilt is an excuse to sleep with a married man, help his mother push his wife out of her. My voice was still. There was an edge to it now. Clean. Not him. Me. Because while you were trying to fix things by being with my husband, I was the one being called and a control freak by people who didn't know me. I was the one making pasta on Tuesday and waiting for a man who was coming home. I was the one who didn't know. Naomi sat very still. The tears had stopped. She looked, not angry, not defensive, just hollow, like someone who she'd been running from for a very long time. I'm sorry, she said. In this, I believed her. Not because the apology fixed anything, but because the thing Naomi had said since she sat down. Don't apologize to me, I said. Apologize to yourself. You've spent 8 years punishing yourself for one night, and you've used it to justify hurting someone who never did anything to you. That's not guilt. It's selfishness. I stood up. I looked down at Naomi, who was still sitting at the table, and broken, and not at all the villain I'd imagined. Stay with me, I said, and stay away from my husband. He's not your redemption. Take responsibility for his own choice. I walked out of the shop. The air was cold, and it felt good on my face. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing deeply, and realized my hands were shaking. Not from anger, from something else. Relief maybe. The weight of having set out been carrying for weeks. Buzzed. Atari, how did it go? I typed, she was there. 8 years ago. She had keys. Holy shit. Me, I know, Mari. What now? Me. Dinner is Saturday. I'm Mari, Clara. I'm going to tell them everything. Love it. Let Linda try to spin that. Mari. Parking lot with the car running. Smiled. I put my phone away and walked into my shop. The bell chimed. Jewel looked up from the register. You okay? Jules asked. Yeah, I said. Okay. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Linda's birthday dinner was at a restaurant called Higgins, downtown Portland. The kind of place with white tablecloths and a menu that didn't list prices because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. I'd been there twice before, once for Linda's 60th, once for Ethan's promotion, and both times I'd spent the evening being quietly judged for my wine choice and my career in retail. I arrived at 7 o'clock, 5 minutes early, wearing the same black dress from the gala. I'd considered wearing something else, something softer, something that said I'm not a threat, but then I'd thought, why? Why should I dress to make Linda comfortable? Let Linda be uncomfortable. The private dining room was in the back. Ethan was already there, sitting next to Karen, his sister. Linda was at the head of the table, wearing a burgundy dress and pearls, holding court with 2 of her sisters and a cousin I'd never liked. Naomi was there too, sitting next to Ethan of all places, her hand resting on the table near his, like she was already claiming the seat. I walked in, and the room went quiet. The kind of quiet that says everyone was just talking about you. Clara? Linda's smile was tight. I didn't realize you were coming. Ethan said you might not feel up to it. I feel fine, I said. I pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table, the other head, the one that faced Linda directly, and sat down. Happy birthday, Linda. The tension was so thick you could spread it on bread. Ethan looked at me, his eyes wide, a silent question. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I picked up the menu and studied it like I cared about the difference between the pan-seared halibut and the roasted duck. The first course came in salad, small talk that was mostly silent. Linda asked her sister about her garden. Karen asked Ethan about a work project. Naomi said something about interior design trends, and Linda laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. I ate my salad. I drank my... When the main course was cleared and the dessert menus were being passed on, I set my napkin on the table and folded my... Before we sing happy birthday, said, I'd like to say... Linda's smile. Clara dear, this is a birthday dinner. I know. And I'm happy to celebrate you, but I think we all need to have a conversation first. About the story you've... The room went completely still. Even the waiter, who was pouring coffee, paused. I don't know what you're talking about, Linda said. Her voice was sharp now. The one. Sure you do. I looked around the table. Aaron. At the aunts. At cousin. At Ethan. For years, Linda has been telling all of you that I blackmailed Ethan to marriage, that I held his DUI over his head and forced him to marry me, that I'm a controlling, manipulative woman who trapped on. I paused. Let words hang. That's a lie. Linda opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. Let me finish. 8 years ago, Ethan DUI. My father paid for the lawyer, paid damages, paid to have records sealed. Ethan proposed to me 3 days later. He proposed because he felt guilty, because he owed me. He told his mother that. The night before he proposed her, I owe her. I'm doing this. Make it up to you. Ethan had gone white. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight. Kim was looking at him, her mouth open. Linda didn't like that story, I continued. Her son marrying a woman of obligation? But the narrative. She rewrote it. She told I'd blackmailed him. She told Bill I was controlling. She turned her son's voluntary into my crime. And she spent 8 years making sure one believed it. Turned to Linda. You told them I was the villain, but you were the script. That's enough. His voice was trembling. Ethan, tell her. And looked at Ethan. He sat there, his clenched in his lap, his face pale. He opened his mouth, closed it. She's not wrong, he said. Words were quiet. But that room. Linda stared at him. What did you just say? It's not wrong. Ethan's eyes were red. Mom did tell people those things. I knew I didn't. I should, but I didn't. And I'm sorry, Clara. I'm sorry I let her do it. I'm sorry I didn't defend you. Sorry for all of it. The room was chaos now. Linda's sisters were whispering. Karen was crying. The cousin was looking at his phone anywhere else. The discreetly disappeared. I looked at Naomi. Naomi was sitting very still, her face pale on the table. One more thing, I said. Naomi was at the party that 8 years ago. She was there. She handed Ethan his keys. She knew he'd been drinking. And she spent feeling guilty about it. Guilty enough that when Linda reached out to her last year, Ethan was unhappy. She saw redeem herself. By being with my husband. Naomi looked up. Her eyes were full of tears. She didn't deny it. You handed him the keys? Karen's voice was horrified. You was drunk and you handed him the keys? Didn't mean Naomi's voice. I was 26. I thought he was fine. You thought he was fine. Linda's voice was cold. You handed my son the keys to a car when he was drunk, and then you came and pretended to be a Mom. Ethan's voice was sharp. You don't get to be angry at her. You're the one who set this up. The argument that followed was loud and messy and recounting. Yelled back. Karen. The aunts tried to mediate. Naomi sat in the middle of it, small and silent, like she was watching fall apart from the outside. I didn't participate. I sat at the head of my hands folded and watched. I'd said what I came theirs to sort out. When the noise died down, when Linda was red-faced and breathless and Ethan staring at his plate, I stood up. I'm going to go now, I said. Happy birthday. I walked out of the restaurant. The night air was cold and clean. I stood on the side a moment, breathed deeply and felt, not triumph, not satisfaction, just a kind of exhausted. I'd tell the truth. I'd take the story back. Whatever happened next, at least it would happen on honest ground. When I heard footsteps me, Clara, Ethan. He was standing on the sidewalk, his jacket unbuttoned, his hair messy from running his hands through it, like he'd aged 10 years last hour. Clara, what you said in there. Proposal. About the text, Mom. He swallowed. You were right, all of it. I married you because I felt like I told myself it was love, but it was. Not really. It was guilt. And I've spent angry at you for it myself. Said nothing. But these last few weeks, Ethan said, voice breaking. Seeing you. Ben, you've stood up for yourself. I realize I never let myself. And now that you're leaving, I feel like I'm finally seeing you for the first time. He stepped closer. Clara, I don't want a divorce. I want to try. For real this time. I want to be the husband I should have been. Ethan, my voice was firm. Stopped. You don't love me. You love the idea of me now that I'm leaving. You love the version of me that doesn't need you. It's not love. That's just what you can't have. That's not. It is. And even if it weren't, even if you really did love me tonight, that doesn't erase 8 years. It doesn't erase the group chat. It doesn't erase Naomi. It doesn't erase the fact that you stood by and called me a blackmailer for 8 years and did nothing. I looked at him, and my eyes were steady. I'm not angry at you anymore. I'm just done, and I need you to let me be done. Ethan's there on the sidewalk, his mouth open, his eye set. A car passed. Somewhere a dog barked. The indifferent end of an 8-year marriage. Okay, he said finally. His voice was barely a whisper. Okay, I nodded. I got in my car and drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Papers were signed 2 weeks later at Patricia Howe's office. The house would be sold, the equity split 50-50. My shop stayed mine, no spousal support. No mutual disagreement clause. Patricia had insisted on it, and I'd agreed. We would not talk about each other publicly. We would not talk about each other on social media. We would simply stop. Ethan when he signed. I didn't. I signed Clara Bennett Hale, Bennett again, and slid the papers across the desk. Them, made copies, did each of us a set. That's it, she said. The house will go on the market next week. I'll be about the closing. I stood up. I shook Patricia's hand. I walked to the door. Clara, I turned. Ethan, the window, was in his hand, his face pale. Are you really going to pay? I looked at him. The man I'd married. The man who'd cried his own wedding and cried again at his own divorce. I don't know, I said. But I'm going to find out. I walked out of the office. The elevator doors closed. I pressed the button for the lobby. The elevator hummed. I stood there, alone, and felt the ground shift under me. Not ice this time, not cracking, just something new, something uncertain, something that was mine. My phone buzzed in my bag. I pulled it out. A text from Jules, that big chain. West Elm? They want to meet. They're interested in acquiring the shop, or partnering on a second location. Can you come in tomorrow? This is huge. I stared at the message. A second location? An acquisition? A future that didn't involve being someone's wife. I typed back. I'll be there at 9. The elevator doors opened. The lobby was bright and busy, people coming and going, the city humming outside the glass doors. I walked out into the daylight, my divorce papers in my bag, my phone in my hand, and the whole uncertain future stretching out in front of me. I didn't know what was coming next, but for the first time in 8 years, I was looking forward to finding. The first month after the divorce, I slept on an air mattress. I'd rented a small apartment in Northeast Portland, a one-bedroom on the third floor of a brick building with a creaky elevator and a landlady who left homemade cookies on the porch. The apartment was half the size of the house, and the furniture hadn't arrived. So I slept on an air mattress in the living room and ate cereal for dinner and told myself this was starting. This was what freedom was. Some nights, I believed it. Other nights, I lay on the air mattress in the dark, listening to the neighbors argue through the wall. What if I'd had a husband, a life that looked perfect from the outside, even if it was rotten on the inside. I'd traded it for an air mattress and a landlord named Maine, and a silence so complete I could hear the refrigerator hum from. Marie came over on. She'd bring takeout and sit on the floor with me and say, "You're allowed." Regret doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It just means you lost something. Nod. I wouldn't cry. I hadn't cried since that. It was like the tears had been used up, replaced by something drier and harder and full. The shop took up most of my energy. The West Elm partnership was real. They didn't want to acquire the shop exactly, but they wanted to stock my curated line of home goods in their port flagship, and they wanted me to consult on a small batch collection. It was more work done, and it was the best thing that have happened. Didn't lie. Work didn't call me a blackmailer. Work showed up. I showed up, and it rewarded for effort, and it didn't require me to be anyone other than myself. "We're going to be rich," she said, pricing out a new line of ceramic vases. Rich and exhausted, and I laughed. It was the first real laugh I had in months. Ethan texted me 3 times in months. The first text came 3 weeks old. "Hope you're doing okay," reply. The second text a month later. "I'm thinking about you. I made a mistake. I deleted it with the rest." The third text came on what would have been our anniversary. "I miss you." "I'm sorry. Always be sorry." I stared at that one for a long time, about replying. I thought about something kind, something to give him closure, something that would let him off the hook. Then I thought about 8 years of silence. 8 years being called a villain. 8 years of waiting for a man coming home. I blocked his number. Naomi did once. A week after the dinner, a long apology that I read once and didn't respond to. I didn't need to respond. The apology wasn't for me, it was for Naomi. A way for Naomi to do something. I let her have it. I didn't owe Naomi anything. Not even a reply. Linda never contacted me. I heard through Karen, who reached out, tentatively, a few weeks after the dinner, to say, sorry I believed her, that Linda had book club, that her reputation had taken a hit, that people were talking, and not about me this vindicated. I didn't feel anything, really, except a faintness. For Linda, who'd spent her life controlling a swing in one. For Ethan, who'd spent 8 years angry at the wrong person. For Naomi, who'd spent 8 years running from a mic instead of facing it. I wished them from a distance, very large distance. The furniture arrived in March. A couch, gray, mid-century, the kind I'd always wanted and had said was too tricky. A bed frame. A dining table that seated 4, which was 3 more than I needed but felt like luxury. I assembled the bookshelf myself, following the instructions with a screwdriver and a bottle of wine. And when it was done, I sat and thought, I built this. Not with Ethan, not for Ethan. To me, I hung art on the walls, prints from local artists, a photograph of the artist I'd taken myself, a watercolor painted years ago. I bought plants. I killed the first 3. The 4th one, a pothos, apparently edible, survived. I named it Stephen. I started going to a yoga class on Tuesday nights. Not because I liked yoga, I found it boring, and the namaste too much, but because it got me out of the apartment and around people about my divorce. I made a friend there, a woman named Priya who was also recently divorced, also hated yoga but kept going, because mats are really comfortable. We got coffee after class sometimes and complained about our ex-husbands, laughed about the things no one tells you, about being single in your 30s, like how grocery shopping, for one, is weirdly depressing, and how you forget to buy milk because there's no one else to drink it, and how the silence isn't bad exactly, it's just loud times in a way you have to. You'll get used to it, Priya said, stirring her oat milk latte. And then one day you'll realize you haven't thought about him in a week, and guilty for about 10 seconds, and then you'll feel. I know. I wasn't there, but I could see it from here. West Elm collection launched in April. It was Knit & Co., Pacific Home, and it included ceramics, linen throw pillows, candles and scents like Coastal Rain and Morning Kitchen. The launch party was a West Elm flagship on Burnside, and I stood in the store, wearing a dress, green the color of new leaves, and watched strangers pick up my vases and smell my candles and say things like, "Full," and "Who makes this?" Jules was beside me, drinking champagne and grinning it. "We did this," she said. "You did this." I looked around the store, at the display I'd designed, at the products I'd curated, at the people, strangers, who were buying something I'd made with my hands and my own taste and my own vision. No husband required, no mother-in-law's approval needed, no story about blackmail or control or debt. This was mine. All of it. I felt something rise, not tears, this time. Summer. Something that felt like pride. I moved into routine easily. Work in the morning, yoga on Tuesdays and Thursdays, dinner with Mari on Fridays, coffee with The shop was busier than ever. The West Elm partnership had driven foot traffic through the roof, and Jules was already to a second location. Maybe. I wasn't sure about Seattle. I was still getting used to Portland, still being Clara Bennett instead of Clara Hale, still getting used to the sound of my own name. Unhyphenated, unmarried, just some nights. The air mattress was long gone, replaced by a real bed with real sheets and and I'd lie there and think Ethan. Longing way. In a roaring way. I'd think about the good parts, because there had been good parts. The first year, when we'd painted the kitchen together and he'd gotten painted hair, and we'd laughed until our sides hurt. The trip to the coast, our second anniversary, when we'd walked on the beach at sunset, he'd held my hand, said, "I'm glad I married you." The nights when he'd come home tired and I'd made him tea and we'd watched bad TV and not talked about anything important. Those moments were real. I knew that now. They'd been real, but they'd been built on a foundation that wasn't. And a house built on sand doesn't stop being a house just because the kitchen was nice. It means that when the tide comes, the tide had come in, and the house was gone. Building a new one, not a house exactly, but a life. One time, one choice at a time. Waking up in it was mine. Apartment that was mine. In a mine. With no one to answer to but myself. It was a Tuesday and happened. I was home. The apartment was clean. I'd spent the organizing the bookshelf, alphabetizing by author, which was the kind of controlling, and now called self. Stephen the boss was thriving. The coffee was fresh. The window was open, and the Portland spring air, cool, smelling like rain and grass, was coming in. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I picked it up. For half a second I expected it. A text. A call. Something. The old habit. Died hard. It wasn't Ethan. It was Jules. Second location is a go. Seattle, baby. Lease signed. You and me, Pacific Northwest domination. Celebratory dinner tonight? My treat. I stared at the message. Seattle. A second shop. A future that was bigger than the one I'd had before. Bigger than the house and the marriage and the life I'd built around a man who'd never really been there. I typed back, yes. And Jules? Jewel. Yeah? Me, thank you. For everything. Jules, you. Don't get sentimental on me. Also, you're welcome. Now go celebrate. We earned this. I set the phone down. I walked to the window and looked out. The street below was green with spring leaves. A dog walked by, pulling its owner. A kid rode a bike. The city hummed with ordinary, beautiful life. I thought about that Tuesday night, 8 months ago. The pasta, the iPad, the group chat, the message I'd typed, "It's fine, no rush. It's okay if you don't come back." And the way it had felt like a door cling, like the end of every. It had been the end of some, but it had also been the. I walked back to the coffee table and picked up my wine. The one I'd bought for myself after the divorce. No sharing. I poured a glass of no, the same kind Mari used to bring. I carried it to the couch. My couch, the gray one Ethan had said was too. And the apartment was not the empty, lonely quiet of the first month. The good quiet. The quiet of a space that was fully, complete. I took a sip. I looked at the bookshelf, the one I'd built. I looked at Stephen the pothos thriving on the wall. I looked at the art on the walls, mine, all chosen by me, all telling. My phone. I picked it up. Another text. Also that guy from the pottery studio, the one who gave us the discount on the vases, he asked if we're single. I said yes. Don't kill me, I laughed. I phoned down. I didn't text back. Didn't need to. I'd think about it later. Maybe, or maybe not. The point was, I leaned. It was good. It was warm. The window was open, and the spring was coming in. And somewhere outside, the world was turning. And I was here, alive, and mine. I didn't need to wait for anyone to come home, because this time I myself.